Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode number 57 of the third season of the Fantasy Fullback Dive, brought to you by the good people at the Road Street Journal, paving your way, acting as your lead blocker, if you will, to fantasy glory. And, with any luck and, with listening to us, which is not luck, I mean, that's just pure skill. That's just good common sense. Hopefully, you have made the playoffs, and hopefully as of the end of tonight, I mean, I don't know, maybe you got some Vikings going, maybe you got some Seahawks going, but hopefully by the end of the night you will have advanced either into the semifinals or maybe even the finals, depending on how your league is set up, of the playoffs. I, of course, am your host, Nat the Truth Jones, who is out of the playoffs in all of my leagues except the Road Street Journal. I had a bye this week because I'm the number one, count 'em, one seed in the expert league, and so I got the week off. So I've just been watching my team that was eliminated in my hometown league light it up this week, which is pretty much always what happens.
Yeah, I know.
Thanks, Jarvis Landry. Thanks, Gronk.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
What's that song by JoJo? A Little Too Late, I think it goes.
I don't know, but I infuriated.
Just a little too
it's like
late.
You want to see him do. You want him to just. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the worst. It's similar
this is
to
the Wolf of Road Street, by the way. I've been rambling. I'm with the Wolf of Road Street himself, and he feels my pain.
Right, exactly. And it's almost like, obviously you're out and it sucks to watch it knowing you would have been into the semis. It's equally scary, I think, when you have a bye and you watch your team just put up 100. Like my brother has 196 points and another guy going tonight. He had Cooper, he had Kittle. All these guys explode. It's just like you can't roll those points over to the next week. They're just blowing their load early. It's the worst. Such a scary feeling.
The number one overall guy in my hometown league that had a bye, I think he put up like $1.75, and I was just like, that's bad luck. I don't know. It's like, are they going to do it again 2 weeks in a row? Probably not. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. It's hard to predict. But anyway, my team blew up now that I'm out.
Of course. That's how
Road
it
Street
goes.
Journal, I'll dig my heels in this week. I might be playing you in the first round. I'm not sure.
That'd be our third time.
You seem like about a 4-seed type guy.
I got your ass spanked in the last week of the season to get some momentum. Spanking Macho Man Ricky Savage in the first round. He had Kittle too, so that kind of terrified me. But I'm moving on to the semis. Feeling good about that one. Got a couple buys, so I'll be back in action in a few leagues. Obviously still butthurt as all belief about the Fez, but overall the fantasy season's rolling. Didn't get knocked out in any leagues this week. Was secured first place in another league that didn't start till late. So I'm rolling this week. A good fantasy week for sure. Solid advice overall, other than Justin Jackson being a complete dud, but we're going to talk about him a little bit later.
I'm not totally all out on him, although I agree he was a dud this week. We'll talk about it in a minute.
Yeah.
We do have a little tiny bit of a different setup. I mean, this is different stuff. This is the playoffs. We're going to prioritize here. We're not going to use the exact normal setup because, what's important at this point? Basically, you're in kind of an every point is crucial situation. Mm-hmm. So even stuff like nailing the right defense or stuff like that could be the difference, in winning or losing. And so every point counts. Not that it's not always important, but we're going to change things up just a little bit. We got our risers and our playoff heroes, and then we're going to talk about some guys that laid eggs that we're pissed about. And you're going to have to imagine when we're talking about these guys that the Sanford and Son theme is playing over it. Mm-hmm. And next season, of course, we'll roll that out. But you have to imagine that Red Fox sitcom opening playing. And then we're actually going to talk about Justin Jackson. So those of you that give a shit about Justin Jackson, and you should, by the way, because he could still be a significant player moving down. And then we're going to talk penny stock waiver wires. We're going to hit every category, and we're also going to talk a little bit about the art of the cuckold. Any of you guys ever been cuckolded or acted as a cuckold in real life? Well, if so, you're really going to enjoy this because there's such a thing in fantasy football as well, and we're going to educate you on that. You can really screw some people over pretty bad by cuckolding them, if you will. Mm-hmm. All right. Risers and playoff heroes. We're going to get right into it right off the bat. Let's talk about Amari Cooper. Let's talk about Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott, in my opinion, I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to come out and say it, all you Cowboys fans. That was the worst great game I've just about ever seen. Mm-hmm. He looked like shit.
Yeah.
I thought he looked terrible. But his stat line will not reflect that. So, anyway.
Yeah, real life means nothing to us. But, obviously that abysmal first half, fumble, 2 picks, just complete garbage, looked on the way to just
about that touchdown pass to win the game? It was a garbage.
Just another garbage. Yeah, could have been a pick. Oh, almost. So garbage game from Dak overall, like in real life wise. But what we care about stats, and my goodness, did he put up those numbers? 455 career high yards, 3 touchdowns. If you have bonus for over 400 yards, which I do in a bunch of leagues, another 5 points for that. So fantasy monster. One of the best plays of the day was Dak Prescott, and of course that came largely in impact to their trade receiving. Amari Cooper getting so much shit, the Cowboys were, for trading for this guy. And now and even us, we were saying, how could you give up a first round for this inconsistent guy? He's really found a home there in Miami. He had 13 targets, catches 10 of them for 217 and 3 touchdowns. There's very few chances you lost if you had Amari Cooper in your lineup. 4th time he's had 100 yards this season, and 2 of them have come in the 6 games he's been a Cowboy. So he's been a monster, especially over these last 3 weeks. He's just been ridiculous. 473 and 5 touchdowns in his last 3 games. So he's really caught fire. We raved about his rest of season schedule, his playoff schedule, and that's really come into fruition this year. Just for perspective, too, he had 22 catches, 280 and 1 score with 6 Raiders games. He has 40 catches, 642 and 6 touchdowns in 6 games with the Cowboys. A true alpha wide receiver 1, getting that treatment from Scott Linehan, as we speculated he might. It's come into even more fruition than I ever expected, and he's loving it. He's calling it a dream come true, was what he was saying in his post-game presser. So when I thought of playing in the NFL as a youth, this is the perfect example of what I was expecting. The city, the winning, the watching our defense, offense, just a team that I want to be a part of. So he's fired up. They're fired up to have him. Dak just couldn't say enough good things about him. Jerry Jones is obviously loving this. He looks like a genius in the aftermath. All things are great coming up spades for Cooper, who has a tougher game against Indy coming up, the 28th points to wide receivers, so 4th toughest in the league. But the way he's rolling, you're not putting him on your bench. And then you got Tampa Bay in Week 16 if you can make it through to the finals, which you just know he's going to fucking explode. So Cooper looking like a league winner over these last few weeks, and hopefully we'll keep that going Weeks 15 and 16.
Speaking of league winners and, George Kittle, can we talk about George Kittle for a second? I mean, it was a little bit before halftime. I glanced up at the fantasy numbers for some guys. It was a little before halftime, and I feel like this guy had like 5 for, I'm going to get this wrong. It was like, I don't know, like 5 for 140 and a touchdown, like a little before halftime, something like that. And
he finished the halftime with 7 catches and 210 yards and a score. So I mean, that all came in one half, which is ridiculous. The actual record for tight end yards is 215. So to think they couldn't get him to 216 with a whole half for 6 yards,
that just shows how much they suck.
Like, what the fuck, Shanahan? You're 2-9 or whatever, 2-10 shitty team. Can't just get this guy the record after he gets you 210 fucking yards in the first half. That's ridiculous. But what a monster. I mean, this is a guy that was going largely in rounds 12 and beyond, and he's emerged as one of the only few among the Ertz, the Kelseys, and not Ertz this week, Eric Ebron. Really, those 3 and Kittle are the only 4 you could totally feel locked in about. I know Gronk had a big game this week, but then he's hobbling around.
Yeah, he's had like 2 this year.
Right, exactly. You can't depend on Gronk. These other 4 have just been so locked in, and what an edge that could be for you this year. I imagine a lot of the fantasy heroes of the league winners, Yahoo does that stat, the most championship rostered players, Kittle, Ertz, and Kelsey, I guarantee will be among the highest ones. Ebron as well, just because of what a great edge they've given you. He did it again this week in almost record-setting fashion. Has a tougher schedule with the Seahawks in 15, Chicago in 16, so not a great schedule, but ultimately that doesn't matter when you're playing George Kittle. He's an athletic freak, destroying the seams in a clear-cut roto of the year for value pick. He's going to be one of the top guys in consideration for that. A lot of tough competition for that, but George Kittle will be among the leaders in there.
I agree with you on that. And since you brought up the term athletic freak, you've been sitting on this guy for like 3 years. Let's talk about Derrick Henry for a second.
Oh, my good God.
I mean, what are we to make of this exactly?
It's just one of those like little dick tugs that is just reminding you of how great he can fucking be. He has these explosions, at least 1 or 2 a year. This one may be the best one we've seen yet. In fact, definitely the best one we've seen yet.
Yeah, it was the best one we've seen. It was like one of the greatest games ever by any running back in the history of the league. Derrick Henry, if he was a woman in a bar, real quick.
I don't know. Like, what could you ever compare him to?
What a tease! Then every now and then she gives it to you, but like,
yeah, like is she
not
just
too
like
often?
dicks you around, like looks great on the outlook. You go up to her and you think you're hitting it off, and then just tugs you around all year, all night. But then once in every blue moon, will just give it to you, no matter as much as you wanted it. It's the perfect night you've ever had, the best time in your life.
That was the best I've ever
and you're in
had.
love, and you're in love, and you can't help it, and it's gonna linger till the next year. You remember that ridiculous game, that ridiculous night. You can't get it out of your head, no matter how hard you try.
You're gonna try to pick her up next year now,
and it's gonna be another dick tug around. It's gonna be another round of teasing, and you're still not gonna be able to get away from it because that one explosion. I mean, you see everything with this guy.
I mean, 17 for 238 and 4 touchdowns, including a 99-yard one where he was literally throwing defenders around like they were like 6-year-olds.
I think he broke like 25 tackles. Like I think he threw the same guy down 3 different times.
He threw the same guy down multiple times during the run. The run took forever.
But
he
ridiculous.
was throwing. He looked like I would look if I were plowing through my 3rd grade daughter's basketball team or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
It was like, I mean, they would just be bouncing off me and stuff. That's how he is with guys in the NFL.
I know. It just doesn't make any sense why he has never gotten the consistent volume. It has to be on him because, I mean, if he's this good and he has these explosions, why isn't he getting fed 15, 20, 30 times a game? It has to be practice habits or just inconsistency. I mean, he hadn't had over 58 yards on the year, so this was just out of nowhere type of explosion. If you used him, congratulations. I saw a guy on Snapchat sent me a message of who he faced this week. Had Henry, Kittle, and Amari Cooper all against him in the same lineup. So it was just brutal. I felt so bad. Like how do you even recover from that? But obviously a league changer if you somehow started him.
Yeah.
And I think he's got to be.
You can't imagine many people would have started him though.
No, but he's out there in like 50% of leagues. He's on the waiver wires in a lot of leagues. This is a guy, again, facing the Giants next week, who've been run all over since trading away Harrison. I guess you got to put him in your lineups at this point. How could you avoid him? But damn, like that was out of nowhere. And if you somehow pulled that off and had him in your lineup, congratulations on your semifinal berth.
No kidding. I do, because the Salt Man specifically asked us to mention this. I just have to bring up, since we're talking about guys that are packing a lot of heat down there, running backs.
Oh my God!
Did you see the video of Frank Gore?
Oh, CJ made sure I saw that one. Holy hell, we were right to put him in the Nutcracker set.
Holy good God! It looks like, I mean, he has like a 6-pack of them down there. Like he's bringing around a bunch of Nutcrackers. Like they're in it. They're literally like all shoved down his pants. He's running on the field, and like you can see legitimate movement down there.
Yeah, it's pretty terrifying for sure.
Yeah, I'm not trying to tackle Frank Gore or Derrick Henry.
Oh God, Frank Gore maybe even more terrifying.
Yeah,
at this
Frank
point,
Gore.
After seeing
I mean, guess what? Guess what, Todd Gurley? You're not getting in the Nutcracker set.
No, that's Frank Gore's
because Frank
territory.
Gore is in it until he retires.
Yep.
One other thing before we go to fallers, I just wanted to ask, hey, did you catch the Patriots game?
Shut the fuck up. That was one of the worst things I've ever watched in my life. No, we're not talking about that one. That was horrible.
Especially, and I don't know if you were watching closely, but the last like 10 seconds or so were crazy.
Oh no, I didn't see. What happened? No, it's
it was
fucking
nuts.
Horrendous. I don't get why Rob Gronkowski's on the field. If it was a Hail Mary situation where like the quarterback could rope it 30, 50, 60 yards even down the field, okay. But it's Tannehill who's playing dinged up as is.
You think that was just classic, like trying to be too cute?
I don't know what the fuck it was. It was clearly too cute. They didn't even have Devin McCourty, one of their best tacklers, one of their fastest guys on the field. He played every single defensive snap except that last one, and look what happens. Did you even hear Tannehill's press game? He's like, I see Gronk on the field, and I think, oh my God, we have a shot. No shit. Like, what are you doing, Belichick? That was
I see a guy that like isn't even good on offense anymore, which he plays, and we're like, we're gonna have him make a tackle, maybe potentially. I mean, for you, I mean, I'm obviously I'm giving you some degree of shit here, but I actually want to know, because you're not in this situation very often. What did that feel like? Your team doesn't do that.
No, it was exactly right. Like, we're one of the more mistake-free, just by the book. If you lose, it's because another team beat you. You never beat yourself. It was just disgusting, embarrassing. Hopefully Gronk's healthy too. It looked like he kind of tweaked himself trying to make the tackle. It's just
trying to run.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's one of those games that could end up probably. I mean, now we have no shot at a number 1 seed. Thankfully, the Texans lost as well, so we still can get the bye, but the championship game is going to run through Arrowhead, and that's clearly much harder to go through than if we had it at home, and that's assuming we can still beat the Steelers, which isn't going to be easy, and 2 divisional games, which clearly are no more give-me's at this point.
Yeah, the Steelers mean business, losing to the Raiders. They're obviously a pretty good organization as well.
Even still, I mean, that's exactly the point. It's like they're the type of team that shoot themselves in the foot.
Right now, if that had happened to the Steelers, I would have been like, yep, right. they're fucking idiots.
Did you see how they allowed the kicker falling and missing the field goal? Like, that's classic fucking Steelers. But yeah, not the
classic
Patriots.
Pittsburgh. No, I mean, I was just like, I was happy, obviously, but I was like, then I felt like weird. I was like, am I on punked or something?
And that wasn't even the first mistake. Remember the first half, Brady took a sack, and then the clock ran out when they were in clear field goal range. That's the win. That's the game right there.
New England's bread and butter, and I'm not telling you anything because you know I'm 100 times better than me. Is like, first of all, I mean, we can take the last play and just be like, wow, you're a bunch of idiots. But like, let's take that out. The things that New England is better than anyone probably ever at is putting up those points at the end of the half, which they didn't do somehow. And then, honestly, right before they gave the ball up to Miami at the end of the game, when they were up 2, I was impressed by it. It almost seemed like they rolled over and took the field goal. Like, I mean, it almost like I was impressed by the fact that they didn't punt, that they didn't score a touchdown or run the clock out. I mean, I was like, okay, field goal, they're up 5 with 20 seconds left. That's like almost as good as a win. I was surprised that it got to that point. I was surprised they weren't able to run it out or actually score. Pretty much just because they always do.
I know.
And so then I was like, all right, well, now they got a fighting chance. And I mean, yeah, the 1 in 1,000 thing happened and they lost. Pretty shocking. I'm bringing it up because we will probably never see that again in the duration of the time that we do this podcast. And I'm sure you are pretty fucking angry.
It was disgusting. It ruined my for everything else that went well. I was happy about my fantasy Sunday. I was trying to mask so that you wouldn't get your claws in. I didn't say anything in the intro, no matter how much it's been eating me inside. But you figured out how to get it out of me. It was awful. I felt fucking sick all day. It was horrendous.
They've lost 4 out of 5 in Miami.
I know, yeah,
in Miami,
right?
The Dolphins, juggernaut that they are.
It was brutal. Oh, all right, God!
I've given you enough hell. Let's go to fallers. Of course, the Patriots would be number 1 on that list, but if you take them off, then Cortland Sutton. And we don't want to say we told you so, but we told you so.
I know exactly that, and he's the only one we're going to cover. I mean, we could talk about Antonio Brown with 36 yards. You're not going to bench Antonio Brown. You're not going to bench Zach Ertz. But Sutton's one of those guys. A lot of people messaging us. Is he going to be their new number 1? Is he going to? Yeah, you can play the junk ass music. There you go. I love it. Everybody responding. Now that he's the number 1, do I play him this week? And we told you, wait and see, sit this guy for now, because how's he going to respond to being number 1? I said I didn't trust him the way he's been so inconsistent all year to now suddenly emerge as this clear-cut guy that can beat press coverage, the number 1 corner of teams, and clearly didn't. 2 catches on 6 targets, a meager 14 yards. If you trusted him, it might have cost you a playoff spot. We're going to go over the guys you should be trusting in this offense, but now you finally know. Hopefully you somehow were able to survive. You don't trust Cortland Sutton from here on out rest of the season. Good talent, good guy to hold on to, dynasty, long-term, an intriguing guy, but right now you got to know you cannot trust Cortland Sutton the rest of the season.
You can't trust Cortland Sutton, and I saw this coming. I'm a Broncos fan, as you know, and they had been on a tear, and honestly, once they lost Emmanuel Sanders, I kind of looked around and was like, well, who are they going to throw the ball to? And even if you think Sutton's done well, we see all the time someone that's decent or even good when they're opposite another really good guy. And then all of a sudden that guy's gone. It's like, hey, now you're the number 1 guy. And it's not like you're the number 1 guy like with Drew Brees or like the Rams offense or anything. It's the Broncos offense, which is pretty shitty. And then you take their big speed guy out, and you're like, don't fully expect Cortland Sutton to just kind of fill in that gap. And in fact, he did not do that. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to talk about a guy maybe you should be holding on, and that's the aforementioned Justin Jackson, who we really liked. We liked him over Austin Eckler. The Wolf said it. I agreed with him. Not much out of him.
No, and that was clearly the wrong call. Eckler getting you nice 16 fantasy points. Hopefully you didn't bench Eckler in favor of Jackson like we recommended. That was one that we definitely fucked up, and I apologize if that cost anybody. Feel free to call in, rip me to shreds. That was one of the few guys we really, really fucked up on this week was Justin Jackson. 12 yards and 7 carries. pathetic after he's averaged 8 yards a pop coming into this game. I did not see him going for under 2. That was horrendous. He did have 23 yards on 2 catches, but why am I saying to hold this guy after he just shit all over the place and had a horrendous game? Well, one, Eckler re-aggravated a stinger that was kind of supposed to limit his workload. It hadn't limited his workload all game until it got re-aggravated, but he left. You got Gordon still banged up. The rumblings are he could be back. They keep saying could. No one's saying expected. Nobody's saying should. So Eckler and Gordon may be out, which gets you, especially considering it's a short week against the Chiefs on Thursday Night Football, gives Justin Jackson a real shot at being a 20, 25 touch guy as the clear-cut only back they have on the roster at this point against a Chiefs defense giving up the second most points to running backs on the year. He can catch the ball well. I know that he was underwhelming this game, but I do think he's an impressive running back despite this bust. So I would be holding hard despite this horrendous game, and the off chance that he is the clear-cut featured back coming into Thursday night, he'd be a top 15 running back play, and for week 15, that's all you can ask for. So hold on to Justin Jackson despite this bust.
And when we speak about real football, potentially a really good Thursday night game.
Can't wait, man. I'm so
excited. A lot
of
fantasy implications potentially, too.
Huge fantasy implications, huge real-life implications. I mean, that's going to be a good one.
Yeah. Speaking of real life, what'd you think of the Rams getting held to 6 points?
I know, seriously, those Bears defense, it's legit as it gets. They can't play in the cold, those pussies from LA. I mean, I do think LA is for real, but shit like that, it's like if they ever had to go on the road, which is why it's so crucial that they're securing home field throughout the playoffs, maybe, who knows at this point. But even if they had to go to New Orleans, it'd be a dome game. So if Chicago, though, they can somehow, I guess they would never overtake the 1 seed. Still, though, that defense
no, they're
is fucking
2 back,
for real,
I think,
though,
with
right?
2 games to go. But I mean, they're a 10-4 team. I mean, they could go 12-4. They're a real football team.
Yeah.
I mean, all these great teams, and there do seem to be a handful of great teams. We've thought all year they've all taken it on the chin recently. I mean, we saw the Saints take it on the chin, who looked pretty much unstoppable before that against Dallas, and now we've seen the Rams and the Chiefs get it taken to them. The Steelers, I mean, I don't even know if we'd put them in that category anymore.
No.
The Patriots, I mean, what are the Patriots? 3-4 on the road.
Yeah.
I mean. That's impressive. Like the Patriots, I think they are still unbeaten at Foxborough. Is that right?
Yeah, they are. They beat the Chiefs. Yep, that's right.
They better hope they're playing a lot of home games in the playoffs.
That's what makes me terrified. To have to go to Arrowhead would be real fucking shitty.
All right, let's talk penny stock, waiver wires. Let's talk about the art of the cuckold, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Shall we talk about the art of the cuckold? Tell us about that in fantasy terms. Obviously, we all know that, if you've been cuckolded, it means your wife's getting banged by another guy.
Right.
And you're probably, about it, and you're just like, okay, that's fine.
Right. It was penned by the infamous Chaucer, a waiver wire guru, notorious for his moves late in the season, of course. But yeah, that's where it comes from, as you explain the terms. And late in the season, cuckolding your opponents is nearly as important, sometimes even more important, than actually improving your own roster. At this stage, there's very few handcuffs. Right. I mean, you still obviously have to have your insurance policies for your studs for one more week, and then you can get rid of them. But if you're head-to-head with your opponent, let's say they have Jameis Winston facing Baltimore this week, or their number one receiver is facing a shutdown and they want to stream, you got to go out and get that guy so they do not improve their roster. Even if he means nothing to you, even if it's just rotting on your bench, what's the point in holding a fucking Cortland Sutton's useless ass at this point? Might as well get somebody that's going to prevent your opponent from improving, maybe taking a defense to stream in week 16, or a defense, even if you have your week 16 streaming defense, that they might pick up against you. It's much more valuable at this point. If you can't improve your roster anymore, that doesn't mean stay inactive and just sit there. Right. You can still prevent your opponent from improving against you, and that is crucial at this time of the year. Too many people just, they're like, I'm set, my team's great and rolling. But even just one move of cutting Sutton to take up the defense that your opponent may have used against you, suddenly that defense has 19, maybe even on your bench, but it's not against you, and that's crucial.
Right. Obviously, almost all fantasy leagues are head-to-head. But this head-to-head, I mean, this is like win or go home. Head-to-head, everything matters. So, you're so quick to say, oh, I'd love to pick this guy up. He's going to upgrade my team by 5 points or something. That's great. But if you can pick someone and say, like, well, their team is going to be degraded by 5 points, it's exactly the same thing.
Exactly.
So think about it that way. I'm glad you brought that up. It's actually, I mean, it might seem like peanuts, a couple points, but man, I've missed the playoffs because I lost a game I shouldn't have lost earlier in the year by 2-3 points. So, I mean, it happens all the time. So pay attention to that. All right, let's go to wide receivers. We're going to rattle through these. We got a couple. We're going to talk Curtis Samuel. We're going to talk Deshaun Hamilton, and then we got a shocker special that I'm not even going to reveal until the end of the wide receiver segment because I want you to just throw it out in our faces. Yeah, let's talk about Curtis Samuel.
And when we talk about cuckolding, these are guys actually making a difference down the stretch here. So if you don't need a receiver, I don't give a shit. Consider picking up some of these guys, starting with Samuel. For his second straight game, over 80 yards, 4 catches on 8 targets, goes over double digits for his 4th straight game, and 5 of his last 6 have been double digits. This guy has been slowly and steadily a very dependable wide receiver 3, 14, 11, 12, 10 in those last 4 games. It's a very concerted effort. It doesn't seem to be a coincidence that Cam's shoulder is banged up, and they're now targeting one of their best yards after the catch threats with Samuel, who's doing a ton of damage once he's got the ball in his hands, and that's what they need to do right now with Cam Newton underthrowing his receivers and not able to push it deep. This is Samuel's bread and butter right now, and now he's got a couple good matchups. We've raved all the last 6 weeks about the Panthers' playoff schedule. He has New Orleans coming up this week, who get destroyed out of the slot, who get destroyed by number 2 wide receivers. I imagine Lattimore will be on DJ Moore, setting up Samuel for a potential huge game against New Orleans in a potential shootout. I love Samuel moving forward.
All right, how about Deshaun Hamilton? He's only 7% owned.
Yeah, Deshaun Hamilton, 7 of 9 targets for 47 and a touchdown. And where did that come from? No other spot than the slot. And we know Case Keenum is a slut for his slot receivers. He always peppers them. That's what made us get so hot on Emmanuel Sanders once the preseason revealed he was going to be their slot weapon. We went all in, and it was working obviously wonders until he went down. And now his new next man up, Deshaun Hamilton, a taller slot guy, big body, solid control over it, really zones in the red zone. We saw that touchdown this week. Good on third down, reliable, dependable, steady guy. Certainly no Sanders, doesn't have that speed either, but he's the type of guy that you can see Keenum starting to lock in on down the stretch run because, again, slot slut, that's Case Keenum's position, and Deshaun Hamilton's the one occupying that with a couple solid matchups coming down the stretch, especially the Browns, giving the 12th most points to wide receivers coming up this week. Denzel Ward goes around the outside. He's a great corner, but Hamilton will avoid that coverage and should be able to roast them. And they've got Oakland in week 16, so a nice slate for Hamilton, only 7% owned, someone to definitely look at.
All right, super shocker of the week, Wolf. Who you got?
That's Robert Foster. Actually, not our first time mentioning this guy, but he's somebody because he's on the Bills, and you don't ever want to own the Bills. And you know what? I can't even disagree with that. I don't know if I would ever want the playoff hopes of mine in the hands of someone on the Bills. But Robert Foster, just to point it out, has been very money lately. 3 of his last 4 have been double digits, 12, 16, 3.2, and 13. A small school guy that's really had to earn his way into the league, similar to kind of like Antonio Brown and even Philip Lindsay, the way he was undrafted free agent, but just talent just kind of popped off the tape. This guy actually came, I don't think he was small school, though. He was, I believe, Alabama, but just kind of buried and never really showed up.
1%.
With
1%.
Like freakish ability. But now he's 1% owned. And, I mean, I can see him still putting up some big plays. I wouldn't want to have him staring across from me in somebody's flex and catch a 60-yard bomb, which is what he's been doing. 8 targets, 7 catches, 104 this week. I mean, I don't know. Facing Detroit, too. Not a great secondary, giving up a bunch of touchdowns to wide receivers these last couple of weeks. It fosters somebody, if you're in the deepest of leagues, if you're in a 32-team fantasy league, maybe consider him. I just wanted to throw it out there that this guy's been blowing up these last few weeks.
All right, let's go to running backs. Kenneth Dixon, 8% owned. We're digging deep here. We talked about Dixon last week. You got anything new to add about him?
I mean, he's still only 8% owned, so clearly none of you guys really listened and have raved about how Harbaugh always wants to force this guy in and get him usage. And it started, the tides are starting to turn as early as this last week. 8 carries, 59 yards, and a score. Goal line vulture coming out for that. Catches a ball for 21 yards on a 3rd and 19. And right after the game, Harbaugh saying he expected Dixon's role to grow going forward, which obviously comes at the expense of Gus the Bus. Our love is now going to be maybe seeing his role decrease. He outtouched him 16-9, the bus did, against the Chiefs, but Dixon had the more yards per touch, just more effective overall, and the snaps were pretty damn close at 31 for Gus and 23 for Dixon, and with that was all before Harbaugh said his role is going to grow, so expect that Dixon's a guy that you could potentially use. We talked about how unbelievable that playoff schedule is. Getting Tampa Bay next week, 5th most points to running backs. That's pathetic. Could find his way into the end zone again, especially as the guy that can clearly catch the ball and offer 3-down potential. Dixon might be a flex stab worthwhile for next week.
Ito Smith, would you care to follow up Kenneth Dixon with a little Ito Smith love?
Yeah, mine as well. Get 60 yards on the ground, 14 through the air, so a 74 total yard day. And this
3 catches.
Yeah, exactly. And again, out-touching Tevin Coleman back-to-back weeks. Out-touched him last week 8-7, now out-touches him 14-11, and it seems like everything's kind of tilting into his favor. And Coleman obviously getting the bump down in this one. The reason that we really are mentioning him, though, at 28% owned, Arizona's up next. 3rd most fantasy points to running back, routinely just bludgeoned on the ground. And Ito Smith, if he's the main guy, could definitely find the end zone. He's had some huge runs, like truck sticking quickly, and just some unbelievable plays. I think this is a week you could unleash him in your flex and get some very just out of nowhere running back value.
All right, let's move on real quick. We got one tight end to talk about, and that is Ian Thomas. Household name Ian Thomas, 7% owned also. I love that you're going deep with these this week.
I mean, they're forced to go deep when you're in week 14, but that's the only reason I gave you one tight end is because he's unlikely to be owned in your league, and this guy's become a target hog. As soon as Olsen went down last week, he had 5 targets immediately and hauled in 40 yards. Said, keep this guy on your radar. Maybe he's something. And then he comes back with 9 of 11 for 77 yards. This guy's been vacuuming the looks, especially as Cam Newton's arm seems to be deteriorating, those shoulder problems, limiting him to just the pop gun style throws that plays into the tight end over the seams, short gainers. Ian Thomas is the apple of Cam's eye right now. He's got the Saints on deck, who just gave up 2 scores to Cameron Brate last week. A big body that can use that frame in the red zone. Do not be shocked if Ian Thomas finds the end zone and maybe gets roughly 50 yards next week.
All right, you've been talking about this guy for a while, Josh Allen at quarterback, our one quarterback, candidate that's maybe not going to be owned. Was this guy always this? I mean, was he when he came out? Was he known as this amazing running quarterback?
I think he had
known
athleticism, but even then, it just not this much. He didn't take off and rush around in college like this. 3 straight 100-yard days. As we mentioned, I think that's an NFL record. We talked about that.
I'm almost positive it is.
Only Michael Vick would be the only guy I'd have to double check on that one. And yet he's still only 14% owned. He's been our hero guy. And I get it. There's no more boom or bust guy this season. He's had 12 starts, and it's either been a top 6 play or a bottom 6 play in every single time. Nothing in the middle ground. Never that, 14, 15 style. It's either been 27, 5, 30, 29, 30, 4, 2, 6. But you listen to those last 3 in a row, 4, 2, 6 have been those last 3. Now he gets Detroit. It's a little bit more nerve-wracking because they traded for Harrison, and that's made their defense a lot more formidable against the run, and that's obviously where Allen's been making his money. But it's still not like they're an unstoppable defense, no one that you can exploit. Detroit's not that scary. So, again, are you putting your playoff hopes in Josh Allen? I'd rather not. But after a 4-2-6 in his last 3 finishes among quarterbacks, at least 2 quarterback leagues, this guy better be in lineups.
All right, we don't usually do defenses, but we're going to talk defense because, like we said, every point counts.
Oh, yeah.
Baltimore was dropped by a lot of folks when they were facing the Chiefs, and actually did okay in that game. They've been up and down this year. I think they're technically, and I say technically, but I think behind the Bears, I think they're the second best defense in the NFL, even though it might not seem like it.
I know, and now they're getting turnover-prone Tampa Bay at home. Jameis is due for an implosion. Seemed like the wheels were starting to come off a little bit against New Orleans. Maybe they come off all the way off the rails against Baltimore here. Yes, they're 70% owned, so they might not be out there. But a lot of teams, when they were facing the Chiefs, dropped these guys. So take a look for them first. If they're not there, here's a smattering of names. It's obviously a crapshoot, but the Giants have double-digit points in 3 of their last 4 games. I don't think they're a great defense. They've been feasting on good matchups, but they're facing Tennessee. Unless Derrick Henry does that, what he just did again, which how could you ever expect that? Then the Giants are a fair play against Tennessee at home. Atlanta's awful, I get it, but they get Arizona at home, who's only they're only 16% on. I'd probably even rather play Atlanta than the Giants, just considering how bad the Arizona offense is. The Detroit line just got 18 points, and they have a bad fantasy defense against them. Pick 6 Central. And speaking of Detroit, only 18% owned. And they're now getting the Bills, who once were that locked and loaded stream against Bills. No matter what, you're getting 15 points. I get it. They've been feistier lately. Josh Allen's been rumbling, but they're built well to shut this offense down.
They're still the Bills.
It's still the Bills. They're going to implode at some point, and maybe it's at Detroit this week. I think it's in Buffalo, which makes it a little bit trickier, but still not a matchup to shy away from.
There's going to be dildos getting thrown on the field and stuff.
Right, exactly. Then you got Washington and Jacksonville. First, obviously, look at Jacksonville. 70% owned, so probably not out there, but we saw what Washington looked like this week, which was god-awful. But on the other side of the ball, Washington's only 33% owned, and maybe going to be even less after that pathetic showing against the Giants. But Jacksonville starts Cody Kessler, if you needed a reminder. So that's still somebody you can stream against. Just some names to keep on your radar if you're in the streaming business for Week 15.
All right, one more defensive mention, or maybe a 2-for-1 deal here. We got a real stinker of a game coming up this week between Washington and Jacksonville. While I have no desire on any level to watch that particular football game, I mean, would you be surprised if it was like 9-3 or something?
The over/under should be like 15. It's horrendous. What an awful game.
Either one of those, maybe take a look.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk injuries real quick. Guys, you should have your eyes on. We're going to do a little bit of rapid fire here, but if you want to elaborate on any of these guys, you can. There's a couple big names here. Tyreek Hill.
Mm-hmm. He's just not. It's weird rumblings all day. First, it was Tyreek Hill tells Peter King his foot is bad, but then Schefter comes out and says it's not serious. And he's considered day to day. Of course, day to day is more risky when you're playing on Thursday night. I expect him to suit up, though. It's a heel injury. He's facing the Chargers. It's a big game. They still have a chance to lose home field if they lose these next 2. So as long as they win this one, they clinch it. I expect all their firepower, all their weapons in a tough division game to be out there. And Tyreek Hill gutted it out throughout the game and ended up on way to, I think, like 130 total yards. So I expect him out there. I think he's going to play through whatever it is that's ailing him.
All right, let's talk about another big game. Well, I mean, I was going to call him a big name, but this, maybe 4 years ago. Yeah. LaShawn McCoy, what a terrible game he had, huh?
Oh, my God. What a useless piece of shit. The one time you think you might be able to use him again, facing the Jets, it's the only useful game he's had all year, back in week 13 or whenever that was. Nope. LaShawn McCoy, classic. This is like the 3rd or 4th time this year, too. It's like the first series of a game, he gets knocked out, gets you .01 or some garbage shit, and then leaves the game and leaves you hanging. He's clearly one of the biggest busts of the year, and it's something we saw coming. But even still, if you own McCoy and you somehow are like, finally, I get him in my playoffs, he's going to make it all up to me, and you had this happen, what a heartbreaker, what a gut-wrenching fucking kick to the nuts. Awful LaShawn McCoy day. And you're never going back to him at this point. And there's no Chris Ivory. There's no action from this. It's just more so I wanted to fucking shit on LaShawn McCoy and just say, F you, you bag of dirt.
Sure. Early rumblings also, we touched on this a little bit. James Conner, Melvin Gordon could both be back. No word yet on Matt Breida. Thoughts on these?
I mean, 2 of the 3 produced in their absences. Jeff Wilson got 23 carries, took him for 90 yards, a 6-yard reception. So he topped double-digit points, not a bad day. Jalen Samuels, our favorite tight end, had 11 carries, 28 yards, pretty disgusting. Got robbed of a goal line touchdown from Stephen Ridley, which obviously is infuriating to owners. He did get a stab, though. It is worth noting. It wasn't like Ridley was the only goal line back. Samuels came in later in the quarter, got his own stab at it, didn't convert, unfortunately, but he's not just going to automatically be pulled out, thankfully.
He still put in 15, 16 PPR points.
Absolutely, because of 7 catches on 64 yards.
Right.
So not a bad day receiving-wise. Definitely better than your standard tight end if you can play him there. And if Connor's out, you're rolling him out against the Patriots again.
All right. I think that's going to wrap it up. I'm trying to think if I forgot any other guys. I think that's it, right?
No, that's all. Yeah, I mean, Justin Jackson, we already talked about. If Gordon sits,
right,
a must play, especially if Eckler's out too. So those are just the three triumvirate. All looked, I mean, like backup running backs, but with volume, still decent fantasy producers. So they could all be back in your lineups yet another week.
All right, real quick, who do you like tonight in the actual football game? We got Minnesota, Seattle. There's playoff implications in this game. Who do you like?
I'm going to go Minnesota. I think they have to bounce back after a tough loss last week. They had no Doug Baldwin there for the Seahawks. As much as I love Pete Carroll, and I think he's one of the better coaches in the league, I'm going to roll with the Vikings in this one.
All right, I'm going to take the Seahawks. We'll see who knows what they're talking about come Wednesday.
Alrighty. Sounds
all right,
good.
You got any social media you want to talk about?
Of course, we are a product of rotostreetjournal.com, the best fantasy site out there to turn sheeps into wolves and get you those titles. So make sure you're visiting the site, checking out the rankings, following us on all your socials. On Facebook, you can find us at Roto Street Journal, the same on Instagram. We do our sit-start, show on Sundays, the Fantasy Tailgate. It's been fantastic. We almost hit 100 comments, 100 questions this week, got to 98. So we've set new records every single week. Maybe week 15, we can finally make that record. Tune in for that, or tune in for our early week, tomorrow night show, where I do my rankings live, answer your sit-start questions on Facebook as well. Tune in for that. Get any early prep in. Jump start on your competition. Fantastic way to get your Week 15 playoff prep going. And then Roto Street Wolf is where you can find me on Twitter and Snapchat if you have any personal questions and want to hit me up. You know I'm always down to talk this football stuff. So hit me up. Find us everywhere. And if you like what you heard, I guess I haven't checked this in a couple weeks, but CJ told me you have like 10 to 15 new reviews over the last few weeks. So we got to start reading some of these out for the Wolf Pack. New ratings, new reviews. We love that shit. So I'm actually really excited to go back and read what you guys have to say about us. We really appreciate that. And if we've helped you at all, it may mean the world to us to hear from you guys. Thanks again for listening. We are the Wolves, and we hope to pave that path to the Fantasy Fullback Dive to your title. Best of luck, guys.
All right, I'm going to leave us with two quick the truth comments before I sign off.
Yes, sir.
First comment. We're looking for a sponsor next year for the podcast. Obviously, our first choice, if we could be brought to you by Frank Gore's Balls, that would be our first choice. But if they're not sponsoring anybody, we're looking for another sponsor. So anybody that's interested in sponsoring the best fantasy football site there is and the best fantasy football podcast probably that there is, let us know. Get up with us sometime in the offseason. Second point I want to make real quick. I'm going to get a little political with you, but it's also football related, which is there is no conceivable way that Colin Kaepernick is not better than Mark Sanchez.
I know. I can't believe this shit. Isn't he like suing the Redskins for this?
I don't know, dude.
That's ridiculous.
I mean, he's suing the whole league, but it's like Mark Sanchez is so bad.
I know. That was so bad. Now they're going to Josh Johnson. Come on. Let's be real here. Awful.
Let's admit it. You blackballed the guy. Maybe even had a right, but you blackballed him.
Yep.
Anyway.
Sure.
All right. My name's Nad the Truth Jones.
And I'm the Wolf. Best of luck in the stretch run, guys.
Later. Dude, if we could be brought to you by Frank Gore's Balls, that would be.
We should do a joke next episode like that.
We should like every week next year have a joke sponsor if we don't have a real sponsor. Yeah. Like brought to you by Frank Gore's Balls. Brought to you by